So we welcome all the delegates who have come here and all the attendees who will be who are here to enrich themselves. So all of us, in fact, hope to enrich ourselves by hearing each other and learning from each other, and through that, trying to strengthen our own approach towards being good and doing good. So now we shall begin the formal program of today. First, we shall have the introductory address by revered Swami Atmapriyanandaji Maharaj. He is a senior monk of the Ramakrishna order, who is the current Pro-Chancellor of the Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Educational and Research Institute, RKMVERI, deemed university. He was the first Vice-Chancellor, the founding Vice-Chancellor of this deemed university. He has been engaged in service in the field of education for the past 50 years in so many different capacities as the principal of the Vidya Mandira College and then the Vice Chancellor of our university. So he will introduce the topic and introduce the whole theme of this discussion in this seminar. Thank you.
ॐ यश्छन्दसामृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया आस्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवम् ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ तत्सत्. I welcome all of you this two-day conference on humanitarian philosophy in India, theory and practice. The genesis of this conference is from Dr. Dhar Chakravarti, who is present here. He has been with us now quite some years. He was the Swami Vivekananda Chair in the Department of Environment and Disaster Management, and is a very senior IAS officer, retired. And he had a dream that there should be a center for humanitarian philosophy, practice and theory, which doesn't exist anywhere in India now. So we conceived of a center at Narendrapur, and he suggested that we should have a conference. Dr. Paromita Roy, who is present on the dais there, she is an assistant professor in philosophy in our university. She has been teaching philosophy for a couple of decades, both Western and Eastern. Her specialization is in ethics, particularly environmental ethics, deep ecology, and so on. She is also an animal activist. She proposed a project to the Indian Council of Philosophical Research, ICPR, Government of India, on this very topic of humanitarian philosophy of India. The idea was that Dr. Dhar Chakravarti has been telling us religions like Christianity, etc., Judaism, the Abrahamic faith, they have been claiming in the West that they do charity, but Hinduism are too otherworldly. They think of the other world, think of mukti and so on. They do little or no service to humanity, which is, of course, we know, is absolutely off the mark, but they have been propagating this. That's because we have never been discussing what we have been doing. not only the Hindu religion, of Indian origin. We have Hinduism, of course. We have Sikhism, which is doing a lot of work. Two representatives are here. We have Jainism, Buddhism, and the Swaminarayan sect, they'll also be represented. And the present trend, the global trend, is focused more on man, including woman, than on God. The entire idea of worship of God has been given a turn in the modern world. In our tradition, we quote Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. Owes its origin to the Upanishads, the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavad Gita. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mayi pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sachame na pranashyati sarva bhuta sthitam yo mam bhajat yegatvam asthitaha sarvatha vartamanopi sayogi mayi vartate atmaupamena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukkham sayogi paramo mataha. Bhagavan says, Sri Krishna, a person who identifies himself with everybody else as his own self and feels the joys and sorrows of others as his or her own is, according to me, Krishna says, supreme yogi. Not a person who sits in a cave and meditates. He is a kind of yogi, but the yogi who sees God present everywhere and worships him, interesting statement, bhajati ekatvam asthitaha. Advaita is not compromised, unity is not compromised, ekatva is not compromised, but he sees the same self present in all and in him. This is an approach which is well known to us, less emphasized, much less practiced. And when Swami Vivekananda first proposed the historic occasion, 1st of May 1897, in Calcutta, Balaram Bose's house, that he wanted an organization called Ramakrishna Mission because it should be based named after, based on the ideology of Ramakrishna and named after him who is the source of our inspiration. Interestingly, even his closest Guru Bhai, brother disciple, who was called Ishvara Koti, a special being beyond all even realized souls, Swami Yogananda, he did not oppose, he raised a doubt, are we not deviating from the traditional path which Ramakrishna emphasized again and again, that we should be absorbed in God? Sannyasis and the devotees who are devoted to God should be absorbed in God. They should worship God. But are we not getting caught in this work? The ancient dilemma which Arjuna faced in the Bhagavad Gita, Tatkim karmani ghore mam niyojese Keshava. You are talking about jnana as the highest, but you are pushing me into this ghora karma, the terrible karma. That has been the dilemma, particularly for spiritual people. The Bhagavan elaborately explains to him. The gist of it is, which is the basis of all philosophical and spiritual underpinnings in India, which is work does not bind, service does not bind, it is not outwardness or pravritti, but what binds the ego which feels, I am doing this work, and the attachment, asakti, to karma and karma phala. Karma does not bind, but the attachment to karma phala, attachment to the egoism which feels I am doing, I am the agent, this alone binds. He goes on explaining to Arjuna. Arjuna repeatedly is asking questions till the end. In the beginning of the 11th chapter, he says, my moha, my delusion is all gone. Mohoyam vigato maya. Unfortunately, it came back. Because anything which is vigata will be agata also. Last chapter he declares, Nashto moha spritara labdha. Nashta means destroyed. Moha has to be destroyed. What is the moha? The moha is, I am the body, I am the mind, I am the doer. It's my work. The I and mine, what we call in Sanskrit, ahankara and mamakara. Bhagavan Shankaracharya, Bhashyakara, at the very beginning of the second chapter, he says, Arjuna is depressed, Arjuna is crying, Arjuna is collapsing. Siddhanti mamagatrani tvakchaiva paridakhyate. He is swooning. He threw away his arms, visrajya shasaram chapam shoka sambhigna manasa, and crying. Interesting. Ashrupurna kulekshanam, full of tears, he says, I will not. Nayotsi the Govinda muktva tushnim bhuva, I shall not fight. Simply sat down. What will normally people do? Give him a pep talk, give him motivational talks. Nowadays it's very common. The motivated is also demotivated after the motivational talk. Without spiritual power, nothing can be done. We see in the modern world, even in the field of service, how spiritual power alone counts. Sri Krishna gave him the highest spiritual wisdom of the Ajatavada and Advaita, Atmajnana, the second chapter. Shankara raises a question, is it relevant? Why does he do this? Can it be justified? Somebody is depressed and you tell him about Atman and Brahman. He says beautifully, Aham mesham mamayeti iti pranti pratyaya nimitta. Aham mesham, these people are my kids and kin. Acharya, Matula, Bhratra, Putra, Sakimstata, Yedan nahantam ichhami. They are my own people, my kids and kin. Ahankara and mamakara. Aham mesham mama ete. Ahankara and mamakara is the root of all delusion. So he became completely drowned in Shokamoha Mahadadhi, in the great ocean of sorrow and delusion. And Bhagavan, knowing that the only way, the one and the only way to rescue him from the drowning influence of this ocean is by Atmajnana. So he gave him the truths about his own self, that he is Ajopi Sannabhya Atma, etc. And then he said, Ajopi Shashvatoyam Purano Nahanyate Hanyamane Sharire, talks about the Atman to redeem him. According to Ramana Maharshi, the famous saint of Arunachala in the south, he said, second chapter, the whole of Gita is furnished. But Arjuna, not being able to comprehend it, is asking questions again and again. So this is the history in India. We are rooted in spirituality fully and completely. That God which is being worshipped inwardly in your heart, Swami Vivekananda saw the God which he realized, and the supreme Nirguna Brahman which he realized in Nirvikalpa Samadhi at the behest of his master, touch of his master at the age of 22, 23. Suddenly he saw when he was traveling abroad that God within was emerging from his heart as it were, with myriad legs and myriad hands, with hungry stomachs and tearful eyes. He saw the same God, so miserable. He thought, can anything be done for these people? He was commanded by Sri Ramakrishna. There is a controversy even now prevailing, like in the Bhagavad Gita. Did Swami Vivekananda start a movement which is slightly departing from Sri Ramakrishna's own philosophy? If you read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, simultaneously read the complete verse of Vivekananda, it's a completely different picture. Ramakrishna repeatedly says, be absorbed in God. Dubu, 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 rup sagare amarman. Dub means be immersed, be immersed. Be immersed in God, call on God. In fact, he says, if God appears before you, you will ask for hospitals and dispensaries and relief activities. You will ask for pure devotion. So a completely different picture you get. You read Vivekananda say, throw away all gods and goddesses. Dethrone the God in your heart, in that install man. Suffering man, miserable man. So redeem him as manifestation of the same God. In fact, a religious person thundering, I don't believe in a God who can't give me a couple of pieces of bread when I am alive, but promises me eternal heaven after I am dead. That God is not worth a pie. So facts stare before you. He wanted to get immersed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Look at his life. He was crying to Sri Ramakrishna, I want to be absorbed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. What was Sri Ramakrishna's reply? Chi, you have such a low vision. Chota najar korishni. Tu whatever kher matan shakkal ke asray devi. Like a huge banyan tree will give shelter to so many hundreds of thousands of miserable souls will take refuge in you. And by worshipping God and man, they will be liberated. Once they called Turiyananda, the great yogi, always absorbed in his own self, rarely coming out for service and so on. He called him aside and said his name was Harinath. Hari Bhai, I have discovered a new path for the present age. Earlier they thought they should absorb in God, going to jungles and caves and meditating and getting into samadhi was the one sure way of getting liberated. But I have discovered, he says, that all human beings, sadhakas, spiritual aspirants, will attain liberation by serving man and God. The path of karma, which is actually jnana, that is picked up. Or Sri Satya Sai Baba's representatives here, he has been very close, or Narasimha Murthy ji is here. Same idea percolates everywhere. Be good and do good. Just like our anchor was telling you, love all, serve all. Cryptic small messages. If you love all, Atma Upamena Sarvatra, as your own self, your own divine self, you will attain the highest. Remember, Vivekananda wanted to follow the Ramakrishna paths in the gospel. Ramakrishna told him, pulled him away, and brought him to the Vivekananda path in the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. It was the divine command of his master that he did this. So we are discussing today this humanitarian service. Dhar Chakrabarti is constantly emphasizing this to us when the preparations were going on. There is an idea of charity in the West. In India, it is not charity, it is service. Service not of human beings, service of all beings, knowing that the same divine is present in everybody, not believing, not philosophizing, but actually seeing. Vivekananda once made a very cryptic statement. Don't seek God, see Him. You see the same presence everywhere. It is there in the Gita, it is there in the Bhagavatam, all our scriptures. Tadvanam nanama, tadvanam ityupasitavyam keno upanishad. Tadvana means the self of man. And the Bhagavad Gita, in the 10th chapter, Vibhuti Yoga, the first Vibhuti Bhagavan says, Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutashaya Sthitaha. I am the Atman present in the hearts of all beings. The first Vibhuti of God. If God is present in all beings as the Atman, why not worship all beings? Sarva Bhuta, it does not say the human being. In all beings I am present as the Atman. So it is not so much of charity but service. Vivekananda made a very astounding statement. Let the person who is serving, let the server kneel down and worship. Let the receiver stand up and accept. It is not that you are doing charity to anybody, you are offering as a humble service. Yat karoshi, yadashnasi, yat juhoshi, dadasi, yat tapasyasi kaunteya tatkarushu madarpanam. Means give them to me. Who is the me? He is the supreme being, Ishvara himself, who is present in all beings. So we have several traditions represented here. As you have seen in the program, the objectives and expected outcomes of the conference will be discussed by Dr. P.G. Dhar Chakrabarti, who actually was the inspiration behind the organization of this. Humanitarian philosophy in Indian traditions, Hindu, Buddhist, Jain and Sikh will be discussed by Dr. Paromita Roy, because she only originated this conference based upon the Indian Council of Philosophical Researchers grant. And Swami Muktinathananji, a very senior monk who is here, who has been in the relief department for a couple of decades, more than 30 years. So he has been spearheading the whole relief operations when he was Belur Mutt. He is our good friend, philosopher, and guide. He has a great affection for me in particular. He is not he's reasonably old, not very old. But Ramakrishna Mission monks never age, like Narasimhamurtiji. The eternal youth they have. You know why? The secret is serve others. If you go on serving with positive thoughts, you will never age. There is one delegate here, Fatiq Babu apne achen. So this gentleman has been attending our classes, spiritual classes, for 20 years since inception. He is 100 years old. Still, he takes a bus from Salkia, enthusiastically participates in everything, because if you have positive, unselfish thoughts, everything goes through. Then he'll be discussing the philosophy and the history. The history started from Swami Akhandananda in Sargachi, but what we forget is Swami Ramakrishnananda in Madras, now Chennai. Sri Ramakrishna showed him 2 orphan boys and told them, please take care of them. Shashi Maharaj, Swami Ramakrishna said, who will help me? I am very new. He told 2 people, Ramu and Ramanaju, Ramasamy Iyengar, Ramanujachari, and that's these people will help you. God chooses you. Jesus the Christ famously said, you have not chosen me, I have chosen you. Many are called, but a few are chosen. So chosen people of God, just like our Narasimhamurti who is here, he was chosen by the great master of the recent times, Satya Sai Baba, and still is going on at the age of 82. And we have a tradition from Swaminarayan, BAPS they call it, from Calcutta he is coming, he'll be coming any time. Dr. Sudarshan, who is here, is a well-known figure in Ramakrishna Mission circles. He was a brahmachari for a couple of years here, and with the blessings of his guru, he left here and then started a huge movement for integrated tribal and integrated rural development in Karnataka. The Jain philosophy, we have a representative here, Sri Jayesh Bhakda, from Srimad Rajachandra Mission, Dharampur. We know very less of it, so we'll know more. Sri Narasimhamurti, Chairman of the Prashanti Balamandira Trust and Chief Mentor, Sri Satya Sai Loka Seva Gurukulam Group of Institutions. First Chancellor is now a former of the Sri Satya Sai University of Human Excellence in Karnataka. So tomorrow we'll have from Swami Divyananda from Bharat Sevashram. They are doing a lot of work in Hinduism. Buddhist philosophy of compassion, theory and practice will be discussed by Professor Tashi Sring. He is a retired professor, Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath. He has been teaching Buddhist philosophy for several decades there. And we have 2 eminent people who flew directly from London. So they should be tired. We didn't allow them any rest. So they flew from London to Delhi and Delhi to Calcutta. Dr. Gopinder Kaur Sagu and her daughter. They belong to Guru Nanak Nishkam Education Trust in Birmingham, UK. There is Bhai Mohinder Singh, is an old veteran. He has been doing great service in the name of Guru Nanak Ji. And the conclusion will be, once again, Dhar Chakravarti, he is preparing a charter, Indian Humanitarian Philosophy Charter based on the discussions here, which will be shared with you, how it can add value to enrich the global humanitarian charter. So with these few words, I welcome all of you, our students, our captive audience. They have no chance of escaping like your institutions. So we keep them all the time because you know so much, you can learn so much which you can't learn in classrooms. So I expose them to all possible things. And many of our devotees are here. So I welcome all of them. Swagatam, Suswagatam.
Our thanks to Maharaj for introducing the theme of the seminar. Now, the objectives and outcomes of this conference will be laid out by Dr. P.G. Dhar Chakrabarti. I'll just give a very brief introduction without eating too much into his time. Maharaj already introduced to some extent. So he's currently the emeritus professor of our university, and he was the former head. He's the former head of the Department of Environment and Disaster Management of RKMVERI, and he was the Swami Vivekananda chair. But prior to joining RKMVERI, he had a very long and distinguished career in the Indian Administrative Service, IAS. And into the theme of the seminar, he has a lot of experience in practically dealing with the response to various humanitarian crises. He has served in several different capacities, such as the Secretary of the National Disaster Management Authority. And he was also the Executive Director of that authority. And he was a director of SARC Disaster Management Center. SARC is the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. It's an international organization. And he was also the member of the Advisory Board of Central Emergency Response Fund at the United Nations, and so on. So there is, if I start speaking, there is much to speak about him, but I will restrict to this, and now he will present the objectives and the expected outcomes of this conference. Sir.
Respected Swami Atmapriyananda, my colleague Dr. Paromita Roy, and distinguished participants. So before I explain the objectives and the expected outcome of this conference, I would like to set the context. And I will start with the immediate context, the context of this hall, where we have revered monks, we have brahmacharis, we have religious leaders from various religion, we have the faculty members, we have the students, and we have the devotees. Now, what is common among all of us? I think the most common thing is that we are all human beings. We are all human beings, despite all the differences. Now, the biologists, they call us Homo sapiens, that we have evolved from the animals. We have a body, but the difference with the animals is that we have intelligence, we have a brain. And due to this intelligence, we can think, we can speculate, we can create, and therefore we have created a huge human civilizations. But what actually is the difference is not the power of the brain or the consciousness. Now, consciousness is also something very, very difficult, and there are a lot of research is going on the consciousness. What is the mind? By this consciousness, we can distinguish between the good and the evil, the good and the bad, what we should do, what we should not do, the morality, the question of ethics. So that is what differentiates human beings from the others. Now, because of this, what is good and what is bad, we look at the larger context of this humanity. From the human being to the humanity, Manavata, the entire humanity, about 8 billion population. There are so much of differences. Some differences which are natural, based on gender, based on our age. There are based on our color, skin. And there are a lot of differences which are created by us. The differences based on education, based on wealth, on the income, on the place where you are born. Some people are rich, some people are black, some are white, fighting each other, different religious faiths. These are all created divisions. The humanity teaches us to look all human beings as one. We are all human beings. And that is Manobata, humanity. And that humanity laid the foundation of great philosophies. I think original humanists are all religion. We have the religious humanism, which unites all religion, telling us the same thing. Then have the spiritual humanism, that developing whatever inherent capacities and knowing the ultimate, spiritual humanism. We have the rational humanism in the West. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant, like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and so many philosophers. We have the utilitarian humanism, Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill, etc. We have the post-colonial humanism. A lot of new theories are coming up. There are so many philosophers, different sets of thoughts, and I'm not going into that. Very rich literature in humanism. We have the radical humanism. One Indian humanist, M.N. Roy, some of you must be knowing, from West Bengal. He became famous. This famous book, Reason, Romanticism, and Revolution. It taught us about a radical humanism, which gave an alternative to the Marxist humanism. So I'm not going into all this. So this is humanism. Humanity, from humanity to humanism. But we are talking today is humanitarianism. Now, what is the difference between humanism, manobata, and manobikata? Manobata, humanism, manobikata, humanitarianism. That means, what is humanitarianism? Humanitarianism is that when the human beings are in distress, when they are suffering due to famine, due to war, due to natural calamities, when they are in distress, they are homeless, they are dying on the streets, they are suffering from hunger, from ill health, from epidemics, from pandemics, from war. So this is humanism, humanitarianism. So there we have to come to the service of this humanitarianism. The Ramakrishna mission was born, and within 2 weeks of its birth, I think it was founded in May, somewhere in May 1997, and somewhere in June, July, middle of June. Swami Akhandananda, he was traveling in Murshidabad, and he saw people in distress, in famine, and he started his relief work. He was helpless, he was looking for help. He was asked to come back to Belur. He wrote a couple of letters to Swami Vivekananda, and which moved Swamiji. Swamiji gave him 2 disciples, two persons, 2 assistants, and 100 rupees to start his relief work. And Ramakrishna from Madras was helping him organizing relief, and thus they started this movement. And movement in 1897, long before the Red Cross Society was set up. And the Red Cross Society in Europe, in the West, is called as the founder of humanitarianism, modern humanitarianism. A Switzerland from evangelist, his name is Durant. He saw the sufferings of the human beings in the Battle of Solferino. And he saw that even for treating the wounded, there was discrimination being made between nationalities. And enemy soldiers were not being treated. And he said, no, we have to treat everybody. This is the cause of humanitarianism. And he started that thing in 1863, that he started. Then in 1864, the Geneva Convention took place on war. And subsequently, it took the shape of the Red Cross Society. And Red Cross Society, it was set up somewhere and then subsequently in 1919, they said, let us think beyond the war. Let us think of the humanitarian crisis beyond the war, in natural disasters and other situations, in famine and other situations. Then they came the International Federation for the Red Cross. And the Red Cross, why Red Cross? Because it was basically a Christian symbol, cross. In the Swiss national flag, if you see, it has a red background with a white cross. And Junant, he started his logo, white background with the red cross. Basically, it is a Christian symbol. And when the movement spread to other countries, Islamic countries, they objected. They said, we will not object this. So they adopted another thing. They put a crescent. So the Red Cross became International Federation for the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, in order to accommodate the Islamic faith. Then the Jews said, look, we are neither Christian nor Islamic, so include our thing also. So they put a red crescent. So now in the symbol you see Red Cross and the Red Crescent. So we find, then where do we stand? We have about 28% of the population in the world are Christian, about 25% are Islamic. We have about 15% Hindus, about 4% Sikhs, Buddhists, about 30 million Sikhs around the world, about 5 million Jains, and 15 million, Judaism, Jews. So 15 million Jews, they could put their stamp of Red Crescent into that. And we, the larger humanitarian or civilization, much older than the Abrahamic faith, we have been doing it for thousands of years, and we have our humanitarian philosophy. So where do we stand? So the international concept of humanity based on neutrality, on independence, on humanity, and humanity that was added much later, after Second World War. When Russia and China came, they said no, International Convention on Human Rights and other, it was recognized, United Nations Charter and etc. So humanity was added another principle. But the other principles are not there. So we find that this humanitarian crisis, it is increasing. It is increasing. So there's so much of crisis. There are 72 places in the world where kind of conflict or war is going on. Look at the Gaza Strip, look at Syria, look at Yemen, look at Sudan. Such a crisis situation. Look at the disasters. Every year there are about 400 to 450 natural disasters in the world, which is killing few lakhs of people every year. And millions of people are being affected by disaster. So much of human distress, communal riots, conflicts, ethnic conflicts, these are going on. And annually about how much money is being spent? About 40 billion US dollar. 1 billion US dollar is equal to about 8,500 crore. And 40 billion US dollar is being spent on humanitarian relief. And they say it is not adequate. Our government, Indian government, is spending about 1,30,000 crore on disaster relief for every 5 years, or as per the Finance Commission, regulations. So, and then we are spending it, government is spending it, NGOs are spending it, international organizations spending it. But what is the level of satisfaction? We are spending the money as a kind of a relief, as a kind of a dole, as a kind of charity, as a kind of giving it. So giving and recipient, give and take relationship. So those who are doing it, humanitarian actors, they do not have, it's meant a sense of service, of doing service to others, having empathy with the sufferers. So that is very important. So that's what we thought, that we have the tradition of some of our philosophical tradition, and which is not merely pedantic or intellectual, but practical. That is what Swami Vivekananda said. Practical Vedanta, doing service to man as a means for spiritual attainment. That look at everybody as a part of the humanity and serve them. So the concept of service, or seva, and which is even very strong in Sikh religion. And there is a service as a community, langar, concept of langar. The concept of compassion, karuna, which is very strong in Buddhism, karuna and Jainism. And the concept of dana, giving, it's not charity. Dana is not charity. Dana is not that I have wealth and I'm giving it. I have wealth. It is not zakat in Islamic religion, that you give 2% of your earning to poor people. Dana is something different. Dana means that you have not a give and take relationship. but you are merging with that, feeling of empathy with that. So these are some of the very cardinal principles of Indian humanitarian philosophy. On Indian humanism philosophy, a lot of things have been written. I searched in the Google, any literature on Indian humanitarian philosophy, I didn't find any. This is the first work of its kind which Paromita is doing. And Indian university, there are 700 odd universities. There is not a center for humanitarian studies. We are probably the pioneer in starting this center. Whereas these humanitarian studies center are available globally in US and America and other countries. There are about 150 such centers globally. In our country, we are not doing it. Whereas we have the repository of so much of knowledge on our philosophy, concept of seva, karuna, and dharma. That is also another, which combines all three, seva, karuna, and dana, and there are different facets of that. So what are these concepts of seva? And where are these initiated? And how the seva, karuna, and dana is being practiced on a day-to-day basis by different organizations, religious organizations. Ramakrishna Mission Relief, Swami Muktanathananda is here and he has devoted his lifetime. And I have, I've read your long paper on Ramakrishna Mission's relief work. So motivating, so motivating. So now this is the work we are doing it silently, longer than the Red Cross. Everybody knows about Red Cross, Red Crescent, Red Star. But we are not. We have not been properly projecting our case. So the very purpose of this workshop is that we will discuss how this concept is being practiced by different religious faiths in India, how we are institutionalizing these values in our day-to-day practice, and how these values can be included into the humanitarian work of different organizations, government organizations, so that the level of inefficiency, corruption in the distribution of relief matters and others are reduced. Those who are giving relief, they should be given some kind of training where these kind of values should be inculcated, so that when they are giving relief, they are relieving it with the spirit of service, and how we can do this. So this can change the entire scenario. So we have taken up this work as a research work, but from the research certain truths will come out, and from the truths we will be projecting and we will be discussing after this thing tomorrow in the afternoon, which I'll be presenting, an Indian humanitarian philosophy charter. What are our values? And this charter, we will be taking it in different forums globally and ultimately to the United Nations, because the United Nations in 1991, they have approved the humanitarian principles of neutrality, of independence, of humanity, and these 4 or 5 principles. So where in these principles, our philosophy of seva, of karuna, and dana should also be incorporated. That is our ultimate objective. That is the expected outcome of this seminar is the adoption of the charter, but our larger outcome to disseminate the thought, to publish our thing, and then to see whether we can incorporate these values into the international humanitarian system. Thank you.
A very good morning to all of you. My respectful pranams to all the dignitaries, monks, Brahmachari Maharaj who are present here. My namaskar to the devotees present here, and my best wishes to all the students and scholars who have gathered here in the auditorium. Now, the topic for today's discussion is humanitarian philosophy in Indian traditions, where I'm trying to cover in a nutshell the main philosophy in service in Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, and Sikh traditions. So when I'm starting with the Hindu tradition, now in Hindu philosophy of Vedanta, we actually get we talk about two realities. One is the absolute or the Paramartha, and another is the relative or the Vyavaharika. Now, this relative world is where we perform actions, mainly selfless actions. We are motivated, inspired to perform selfless action or nishkama karma, which thereby helps an individual or a jiva to attain chitta shuddhi and helps him to attain jnana and thereby liberation from samsara or transmigratory existence. So this is the importance of nishkama service or nishkama karma yoga in Hindu religion and philosophy. We know that Swami Vivekananda, he had been inspired by Bhagwan Sri Ramakrishna's Bhagavad Gita and Upanishad, and every now and then he would emphasize on Nishkama Karma Yoga as a very powerful means for liberation, and it is very pertinent and very relevant in today's world, which is action oriented and action dominated. He had further emphasized by citing Bhagavad Gita that selfless service to all beings is the veritable worship of God as He resides in all beings, which is what we are doing in the Ramakrishna mission, Shiva Jnani Jiva Seva. So we know that in Indian thought, humanitarian service is not mere elevation of suffering, but it is positively impacting individual and collective life of all by eradication of sorrow together with the attainment of supreme joy, ananda. So this is, which is the ultimate aim of Vedanta philosophy. In Bhagavad Gita, we find that there is the clearest discussion of this world as dharma kshetra, where individuals need to perform selfless action. Bhagwan Sri Krishna, he instructs Arjuna to perform dharma, which is through the act of service, selfless service for the welfare of the world, which is loka sangraha. And there are instances also in the Bhagavad Gita of King Janaka in the verse 320 of the Bhagavad Gita as to how he attained perfection through actions which are performed selflessly for the benefit of the society. And Bhagwan also mentions that how the great leaders should engage in the welfare activity of the world and not to move away from it, not to take a retreat from it. And they should set an instance which would be followed by ordinary human beings. So this is how we find that social ethics and moral leadership become inseparable from spiritual duty. In the Bhagavad Gita, therefore, we find that dharma is not merely a personal duty. We can cite the instance from the verse 310, where the Creator himself, Prajapati, created all beings along with the idea of service or yajna, commanding the creatures to actively and gladly participate in these acts for mutual benefit and prosperity. So this is how the moral framework is being prepared, which holds the society, binds the society together. And this is also especially explained in the chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, where Bhagwan Krishna explains karma yoga or selfless activity for the universal, for the benefit of the society. And this humanitarian action should not be ego-oriented. There should not be any expectation or desire for praise. And that is what would bring a positive impact on the society, which is done not for any personal gain. Now we see that this very motivation behind selfless sacrifice or selfless service for the benefit of all, this is ultimately rooted in the Hindu sentiment, which is the fundamental realization of oneness of existence. When we actually find the same self pervading in all, we do not actually inculcate that idea of harming others, because then harming others would be equivalent to harming oneself. So this recognition of unity, it naturally leads to empathy, reverence for all life forms. As Maharaji was saying, it's not humanitarian service only to humans, it is to entire living community. And this is how humanitarian service becomes fruitful in its objective. And Bhagavan Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he repeatedly insists for offering such service to God. And these are being well explained in the verses 3.7, 3.9, 5.10, and 18.66 in the Bhagavad Gita. So we find that humanitarian work then becomes a form of karma yoga, a sacred duty which is aligned with the cosmic harmony. Now, coming to the main idea of humanitarian service in Buddhism, it is the philosophical foundation of humanitarian service rooted in the Four Noble Truths, where we actually we confront the universality of dukkha or suffering, which emphasizes conditional state of existence. And this awareness, this recognition, this realization of the universal suffering, which is actually the conditional state of existence, this inspires for the compassion for all beings. The fundamental idea of karuna, which is very prominent in Buddhism, it arises from the very idea or the doctrine of pratitya samutpada, or the dependent idea of the dependent origination, which shows that everything is causally related and therefore everything is inevitably interconnected with the other. There is a state of interconnectedness in the entire web of relationship. And everything, therefore, in the universe is depending upon a condition, and it ceases when that condition disappears. Now, because everything has a causal origination, we cannot actually set any individual event being apart or in isolation. They are all inextricably woven together. If we go through the Upanishad Sutta, it is often quoted and it is explained there how suffering, when it is realized, understood from deep within, it becomes the foundation for spiritual growth. And this suffering, when we realize, it is not the suffering of any individual being, but it is the suffering of the whole of this entire humanity, or the whole of the entire universe, and we all share a causal continuum. Now, this insight into the suffering, the very interconnectedness, it is further deepened by the idea of shunyata, or emptiness. In Buddhism, the idea of emptiness is not necessarily void. In the Mahayana philosophy, that we find in the Mula Madhyamika Karika, that shunyata gives the knowledge of the relational existence of everything in the universe. Because the very idea of shunyata or nisvabhavata is because nothing actually has its own exclusive nature. Because when we try to investigate its nature, we find that whole of the cosmos contributes to its existence. So this is how, when we try to find the nature of any particular entity, that actually incorporates the whole of the cosmos. So there is not any particular thing through which I can explain that particular object or an event. So this is how everything is related to the other. So this causal state of existence actually leads to the very idea of shunyata. And Nagarjuna was indebted to pratitya samutpada in order to arrive at the very idea of shunyata. And this very shunyata, this very idea of shunyata, it reveals that phenomena are empty of intrinsic independent existence, and they exist only in relation to other phenomena. Now, if we look into the very idea of shunyata positively, it actually reveals to us the idea of unity of all beings. This very idea, this very realization was vibrant in the utterance of Swami Vivekananda in his deep realization in the Almora, in the Himalayas, where he had uttered that I saw the whole universe in an atom. And he had mentioned that one of the greatest problems in his life was solved at that moment when he discovered the identity of the microcosm and the macrocosm. So this very idea of interdependence, it eliminates our ego boundaries. We try to relate with the suffering of the other, and this boundary becomes all volatile and it's all conventional. We have all created, it's all created boundaries that we have done, and this has been done by our ego. and that the suffering of one being is actually not separate from the suffering of all. Therefore, understanding emptiness as interdependence, it provides a very powerful philosophical footing for humanitarianism, since the distinction between the self and the other is completely erased. And this provides the rationale for elevating suffering of the other, because then this very feeling of the other does not hold true anymore. Now, this metaphysics, again, spontaneously leads to the arousal of compassion or karuna or loving kindness. In the Dhammapada, in the chapter 10, Danda Vagga, verse 130, this is very explicitly explained there that one should see all beings as one sees, one should all see all beings in oneself, making the reduction of suffering a moral and spiritual imperative. Further, in the Karanya Metta Sutta, it is beautifully explained how the practitioners should radiate boundless loving kindness towards all beings as a mother protects her only child, establishing the universal ethic of care. We all know about we are all aware of the Bodhisattva ideal in the Mahayana Buddhism, and the texts like Lotus Sutra, Shanti Devas, Bodhacharya Vatara, Avatamsaka Sutta, they present the Bodhisattva ideal as the feeling, the deep, intense feeling of suffering and the restlessness that one feels at the pain of others, which makes oneself postpone one's own personal nirvana to liberate all sentient beings. We all know, we have also read about Thakur's such, Sri Ramakrishna's such intense pain that he used to feel, and every time he used to stand on the terrace of Dakshineshwar, like one day has passed and still all the devotees have not come. I have to give this experience to others because I want to relieve the suffering of others. So this is the intense feeling that one holds in his bosom, where the other is no more different from me. Thus, the humanitarian action in Buddhism, it arises from the profound insight into the nature of reality, understanding suffering, impermanence, interdependence, and emptiness, which inspires from within to elevate the suffering wherever, whenever it is possible. Coming to the humanitarian philosophy in Jainism, we find that ahimsa is vibrant, prominent in this philosophy, and this ahimsa, the metaphysical concept, where does this ahimsa have its root in Jainism? The metaphysical concept of anekantavada is implicit with the idea of compassion towards all beings in this world. This is so because it is a non-dogmatic and respectful, it helps us to adopt a very non-dogmatic and respectful attitude towards all partial views of reality. It holds in its bosom all partial views of reality, and therefore all partial visions have a place in the whole of reality. Nothing is cut apart, nothing is being negated. So this inculcates the idea of ahimsa or non-violence at the perceptual level. And therefore, this very idea, this metaphysical doctrine of anekantavada, of which the epistemological doctrine, Syatvada, we have that whenever we say that I utter a particular sentence, we add maybe, because since reality is multifaceted, whatever perception I have of the reality, it is only one particular aspect of the reality and not the whole of reality. If I say my view is the only view of reality, I would commit the fallacy of ekantavada. So this is how Jainism displays a remarkable instance of non-violence through this very non-dogmatic perspective rooted in the metaphysical concept of anekantavada, which inspires them for compassion towards all beings in action as well. And because in Jainism it is believed that spiritual well-being of a person is intimately connected with the physical well-being of a person in every life, or all beings, not only human beings, but all forms of life. And they have a very beautiful practice in Jainism, which is called the pratikramana. The idea of interconnection of spiritual well-being of an individual with the physical well-being of all other beings is well understood through the practice of forgiveness that one asks from all beings towards which harm have been done. Now, this is called pratikramana. The Jains, especially among the Svetambara mendicants, we find this practice of reciting a prayer of pratikramana twice daily, through which actually they try to absolve themselves from karmic consequences of any harm done to the wide array of life forms. So we find that non-violence becomes the central pillar in Jain philosophy, and it is not simply an ethical recommendation, but it is the very foundation upon which the entire spiritual path of Jainism is built. And therefore, in Jainism, humanitarian action is not just an outward social service, it is through which one attains spiritual growth and maturity. Therefore, service to others becomes inseparable from the quest for liberation. So, in Jain philosophy, as we see, all life forms are being united, and this profound moral vision, it inspires us to live, to honor life in all forms. Now, coming to Sikhism, in Sikhism, if we try to find out the core idea of humanitarian service, the world is not considered illusory nor something to be renounced in Sikhism. The Sri Guru Granth Sahib affirms that this creation is purposeful and real. He himself has created this world and he permeates it. Ik Omkara Satanam, in the very first verse of Japji. Therefore, the highest form of worship according to Sikh in religion is seva, or selfless voluntary service for humanity, again, without any personal gain. And the rationale for it is grounded in the recognition that all beings carry the same divine light. Hence, he is the one who is served through all. Therefore, in Sikhism, there is no rejection of this world, no asceticism recommended, but they insist on full participation in society through honest work, sharing with others, and constant remembrance of God. We know the service idea is very vibrant in the institution of langar, which reflects ethical sharing, not charity, as Professor Dhar Chakraborty sir was mentioning. We do not believe in the very idea of charity. Dana is not charity, it's meant to offer simple, nourishing meal rather than feast. Now, the langar is prepared and served in the spirit of 4 guiding principles. One is selfless service, nishkama seva, to humanity without any desire for recognition or reward. Compassion, truthfulness, inner content, humility, and love. Working for the well-being of all, Sarbadda Bhalla, which is well known, and treating every person as equal. Therefore, in Sikh humanitarianism idea, we find a very vibrance of service, where everyone has to serve the world, not merely to reduce suffering or avoid harm, but to manifest divine qualities, uplift society, and foster spiritual awakening in both giver and receiver. Therefore, service becomes a transformative force that reshapes the individual and community in accordance with the divine order. This very idea of service helps a Sikh to move from Manumukh to Gurumukh. Therefore, whatever we have discussed so far, we find that across all Indian traditions, humanitarian action is recognized not merely as social benevolence, but as profound expression of spiritual insight, ethical responsibility, and the pursuit of ultimate liberation or divine harmony. Now, the metaphysics may differ, but we find that the underlying vision, they all unite. And that is, human life achieves its highest purpose when it relieves suffering, cultivates virtue, and elevates both self and others. Thank you.
So, Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda is too smart. And we also try to stick to time. So now immediately after the seminar, there will be some discussions. That Swaminarayan, that's like they're also doing wonderful work, as you know. And the Swami has already come. He's given for having darshan of the temples, etc. In every day, today and tomorrow, we have arranged a kind of panel discussion, come question answer, Q&A session. Because at the end of every speech, if you start opening up, people keep asking questions. And many of the questioners, Nishkama Karma, questions for question's sake. Not that they want to know, just they want to show their presence. So it becomes too longish. So all of you who have some genuine questions to ask, seriously you have thought about it, sir, please. You please write down on a piece of paper to whom the question is addressed. So slips of paper will be given to you soon. So we'll collect all that and screen it also, scrutinize and screen. Whatever is relevant, I will request the speakers to answer. Now this brief tea break. So come back after 15 minutes.